Hello, my name is Cindy Collins, and I live in Chillicothe, Missouri. Chillicothe is a really rural town that is about an hour and a half northeast of Kansas City, Missouri. Uh, we have a very high prevalence of um, like free and reduced meals in our area, and the Chillicothe, which is a town of about 9,500, is actually the county seat. So we um, have a lot of people who have a lot of social and emotional needs in the area. Um, One of the reasons why I'm excited about taking this class is so that I can be better prepared to be multifaceted in my profession, whether I decide to go private practice or continue working in the school districts where I am at this time. My background, I earned my BSW in 1993 from the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. And since that time, I have held several positions where there was a fair amount of trauma involved. Two of my first jobs were working with the Division of Children's Services and also the Division of Senior Services um, as a case manager and an investigator. Um, so I was often the first person that many had told their stories to, and because having a social worker or a therapist in the area was is still pretty rare, then we often have had to be not only their first ears, but also the referral source and the person to just kind of help be there to support and steady them through those tough times. Um, so it's been a fair challenge. I would say that probably my most memorable um, traumatic situation that I have had to ever help a client through or help anyone deal with was when I worked at our local hospital as a social worker, discharge planner, um, and I was often called in to the emergency room, especially on weekends if they had a crisis. Whether it was just being supportive, waiting for the mental health center to come in and do an evaluation for possible placement, or law enforcement to come in and do criminal assault investigation, domestic violence, waiting for the shelter personnel to come help pick somebody up to take them to the shelter for the evening. Um, but I would say in that time, my absolute most memorable was early on as a hospital social worker when we had a 19-year-old young male come in with a gunshot wound to the head. Um, it was supposedly um, a gun cleaning accident, so it was ruled accidental. Um, but I ended up being the one to tell the mom that her son did not make it. Um, and not only was he her only son, he was her only child. So it's quite an experience when you know that as you walk out to talk to family, it's really hard to keep a straight face. Um, and they can read it on you. As soon as the social worker, they say the social workers coming to talk with you, they pretty much know what your message is going to be. Um, but I wasn't ready for the reaction that the mom had that night. She literally broke down inconsolably in the floor of the lobby of the emergency room. Um, that was tough. That was truly tough. Um, some other experiences that I've had that have been tough were dealing with serving as a foster parent. Um, it was not uncommon for us to get a phone call in the middle of the night saying, "Hey, do you guys have availability? Are you going to be around? We have a kid who can't stay in their home tonight. It's not safe." So anytime you get calls like that, my heart just sank, and I get that knot in my throat, and because I knew that it was not going to be a tough, or it was not going to be, I'm sorry, it wasn't going to be an easy situation for this person to deal with, um, because it was either because they had experienced the abuse themselves, um, maybe it was a domestic violence situation, and everybody had to get out of the home, and the only way to keep the kids protected was um, to find a home where they could go to until the shelter could find a placement for all of them. Um, and then sometimes it was a matter of they had seen a parent be arrested. Um, even within that, my husband and I were initially not prepared. We have backgrounds in social services and in criminal justice, but we weren't quite prepared to be the ones that would disclose additional trauma, and that was actually the rule rather than the exception. As we became the trusted adult in their situation, which kind of leads to my current position. I teach at a local middle school, and teaching family consumer sciences. Um, we talk about families, we talk about human interactions, and what makes good friends, and such. And often, um, I guess the defenses come down, and the kids take me into confidence to say, hey, I've really had a pretty lousy, rough life. So there are often times that I have to work with our with our school counselors in order to make referrals for for further evaluation for trauma, whether it be from a mental health provider or from a criminal justice side, DFS and such. Um, on the positive side, my husband and I have recently um, started, we've started or completed training, I guess, with the Missouri Baptist Disaster Relief Group. And while we were working in communications, um, the hope is that because the communications center works so closely with the incident management and intake groups, the child care workers and such, that we can be there to um, with this level of support and experience we've had, to be able to um, help provide maybe clinical or emergency trauma services, even though that's not really the reason that we are stationed there at that time. So uh, that is something that we're looking forward to, being able to be a positive support in that area. My interest in taking the trauma course, number one, is to put more tools in my toolbox. Um, that said, I am also very interested in the trauma-informed certification training that goes along with this course, because I think that will be very helpful in my role as a teacher at the school, and then whatever sector I end up in uh, following graduation with my MSW. Uh, to be successful in this online course, definitely going to have some time management. But I'm definitely going to have to take some time for myself, because one of the challenges that I've had in the past is internalizing the pain of others. When you are exposed to it so much day in, day out, as I was for onwards of 10 to 12 years, um, it's hard to just break loose and um, and not have that sense of um, not always being on guard. Um, there's just a lot of stress involved with that. So just learning I think as we see the examples and things, I'm just going to have to kind of come up with some coping mechanisms. So I think that's going to be my greatest challenge and the biggest need that I'm going to have to be successful with this. Um, as far as what have I mastered, I don't think anyone can totally be a master at trauma care. You can have tools, you can have experience, you can have empathy, but every person in every situation is going to be different. Even if they've gone through the same or similar experience, their own personal background, beliefs, and such are really going to make it different from one person to another. So I, with that in mind, though, I believe that my background in staying calm in a crisis, I think will be the biggest benefit for me in being successful in working with trauma. Um, my husband says it's called underreacting because I just sometimes have to shut off the emotions and look at the facts. And I think sometimes that is to my benefit in these situations. So, with that, I look forward to learning more about trauma and working with everyone in class.